Coming up on the show today, we'll take a look back at JSU, Alabama, and Auburn's games, and we'll look ahead to this one this week as well. It's all coming up in the locker room. And welcome into the show this week with Gerhard Mathagani. I'm Chase Robinson, and let's start with college football. Let's start with the JSU Gamecocks as they went down to Baton Rouge this weekend and really played a decent game.
Represented themselves really well. One of the things that Coach Gross took away from that game, even though they didn't win, they came in expecting to win. And I think that mindset really travels a long way with where this Jackson State program is. They want to be on the upper echelon of the FCS, compete for national championships, and then always be in the games, in those guaranteed games, and they have different names and whatnot. But always be in those games no matter who the competition is, whether it's on the highest team on the FCS level or one of the higher teams on the FBS level. Represented themselves really well. I like what the program has done, but there was a lot of mistakes in that football game, and they gave up small things, special teams touchdowns. They got into the red zone and didn't score touchdowns. Little things that JSU's not as accustomed to, but they'll get that stuff settled out as they go into the rest of their FCS season.
They got a big test this week against Coastal Carolina, a team who's been in the playoffs, who's played big teams before. What's JSU got to do to beat this Coastal Carolina team?
I think that they have to play a little bit better than they've played in years past against maybe OVC teams. Now, one of the things about Coastal that gives JSU a really strong momentum moving into the OVC season is that Coastal is a perennial playoff team. They're making that transition from the FCS into the FBS. So they're independent this year. And they're one of those teams that's always in the top 20, that is seemingly, for the last 5 years, always in the playoffs bracket, playoff situation. They've been in the quarterfinals before. They've been in the semis before. This is a program that's started in 2003, but they have gone leaps and bounds over the last however many years to get where they are now. So now they're an independent team. So it's kind of an FCS team, but really an FBS feel for the second week in a row.
Well, here's Coach John Gross this week on playing Coastal Carolina.
These games definitely make you grow. You know, they're definitely, quarterfinal, semifinal, final type games, and the ability of the team that you're playing and the atmosphere. So you look forward to seeing your team grow through these games, and hopefully we'll be able to bounce back and fix some of the stuff that we didn't capitalize on last week. Our guys are pretty steady. They go back to work every day, so I don't expect anything less from them this week.
And you can see JSU and Coastal Carolina 1 p.m. on Saturday right here on TV 24. And let's talk the Alabama Crimson Tide. They played Western Kentucky this weekend, and 38-10 was the final. Kind of a slow start for the Tide.
Yeah, you would wonder how much of that hangover effect would happen after the USC game where they dominated USC down in Dallas, and then you had a team like Western Kentucky smashed right in the middle before the Ole Miss game. We'll talk about that in a second. But Nick Saban used the words like disappointed and embarrassed, and I think that a lot of those buzzwords are more so used to tell his team, hey guys, we can't overlook anyone. And we're so focused on maybe what's going on in 2 weeks or maybe what we just did. And I don't know the internal messages, but it just seems to me that the message for Nick Saban right now is, hey, let's focus on right now. That's what we did not do against Western Kentucky, and that's the reason why we made the mistakes that we made. He said he's disappointed by the win, mainly because they made so many mistakes in the game, and that's a fair reason for a coach to be upset about it. But I think they took away a lot of positives that they'll take into this week against the Rebels.
This Ole Miss game the past 2 years has not gone well for Alabama.
Right.
What's it going to take for them? Because this is, a lot of people are saying this is a revenge game, but still, the way Ole Miss has been playing, I mean, it could be a good game, even though, Alabama's supposed to be the #1 dominating team.
Right.
What's it going to take for Alabama to beat Ole Miss?
It's simple. Don't make mistakes, because last year that killed them. They made so many mistakes, and then you look at plays like a little fluke play that bounced off of 18 different people and then landed in the hands of the receiver and goes. The thing is that Ole Miss is too talented to make that many mistakes against a team like that. They have to limit Chad Kelly, get a lot of good pressure on him. I think that's #1. You can get good pressure on Chad Kelly, then you force him to make quick decisions. We saw guys, you just saw him there in the highlights, guys like Eddie Jackson, who are phenomenal safeties that played that middle of the field really well, kind of like Mark Barron did for a few years ago. You put Chad Kelly in pressure situations, and then you capitalize when you do create turnovers on the other side. That bodes well for Alabama. But keep in mind, Alabama had 16 million turnovers last year. That's an unofficial stat. And they still were this close to winning the football game. I think Alabama dominates mainly because of they'll play well. They'll play a lot better. They can't have the same performance they had last week. But then also that motivating factor. They say it's not an issue. Hogwash. It is.
Here's Nick Saban this week on Ole Miss.
We keep going back to the fact that everything that we mess up, it's not really what the other team did, it's more what we didn't do. All right, so we can get more focus on execution, process of what we need to do to get it right. Emotion doesn't last in the game. Character, want to, commitment to what you're doing, playing for 60 minutes in the game, one play at a time, regardless of what happened on the last game, is the mindset that you want. And I hope that, our players understand that's what we'll need in this game this week.
Ole Miss and Alabama, you can catch that 2:30 on CBS. Next up, the Auburn Tigers. Huge win for them Saturday, and it really looked like they gelled together for this game.
It's a statement win for Auburn, and I know a lot of people kind of scoff at that because it is Arkansas State, and Arkansas State, they had won 4 of the last 5 conference championships, but this is not even the same Arkansas State team that they've seen over the last few years. Well, I think what Auburn can rest their hat on is the execution level that they were able to not only start but sustain throughout the game. Score 51 points in the game. But you saw guys like Will Hastings and you saw guys like Kerryon Johnson, and then you really saw a guy like Sean White who just played really kind of above and beyond what he's played over the last 2 years. And people point to the fact that he's healthy, and that's true. But they now seemingly have settled on the guy, and they're not doing that nonsense they did last week by playing 3 guys, and we're now seeing the fruits of that decision come up really quickly. It would have been interesting to see how this would have been had it been LSU, had it been Arkansas. But it wasn't. It was Arkansas State, and a good team that kind of lays the foundation for what's to come ahead in the next game against Texas A&M.
That's a big test coming up this Saturday, Auburn and Texas A&M. What's it going to take for the Tigers?
Well, they have to be able to defend those monsters that they have on the defensive line. Starting with Myles Garrett, number 10, his name escapes me right now, but Myles Garrett is the prototypical guy that you'll see in the NFL for a long time because he is an absolute beast on passing situations and on passing downs. He understands that if a team gets into 2nd and 12 or even a 3rd and 8, it's a passing down. Auburn's offensive tackles, both of them, young guys, they have to play well against that line. And if Auburn can run the football like they did last week with Cameron Petway and others, and even Sean White got in there, if they can run the football and keep Texas A&M guessing, that means you have to stay ahead of the chains. Don't get behind the count like they call it in baseball. You stay ahead of the chains, you stay ahead of the downs. They'll put themselves in situations where they can keep Texas A&M's defense off balance, off kilter. You do that, and then you have to play good on defense because Texas A&M boasts a really, really good quarterback in Trevor Knight, already close to 700 yards and 7 touchdowns this season. They have to play great on the back end, great in the running game, and then I think they'll have a chance.
Here's Coach Gus Malzahn this week on Texas A&M.
We've always prided ourselves in executing at a high level, and the frustrating thing, last year and really the first game, we didn't execute at a high level, but that's our goal. And like I said, offensively, we're still a work in progress. We got to keep improving. We're starting to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle, but we're still learning about our guys. And, hopefully, in a short period of time, we'll have everything that what we're going to do moving forward.
You can see Texas A&M and Auburn 6 o'clock Saturday night on ESPN. We're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, we'll talk more college football. So stay with us inside the locker room. Back here in the locker room, and we've survived week 2 of college football. So now it's time for our takeaways, and I'll start with you, Mickey, for your takeaways from this weekend.
Auburn's offense has a life. That was the big takeaway for me. And then also, how about Arkansas? They did. I did not pick Arkansas last week, but they've got an uncanny way of getting games into overtime and running some of the most bizarre plays and having some of the most unusual success. And those are 2 things that stand out to me.
Every now and again, Les Miles finds some magic, and I think he did with their backup quarterback. They have a quarterback now, and they played a very good JSU defense. We'll see how they are moving forward. But they're kind of in the spot that Alabama was in last year after Ole Miss. They understand that from here on out, every game is critical. And a desperate team that's got Les Miles as their coach, I never count them out.
Well, let's switch gears to high school now and talk our game of the week. It's Etowah at Alexandria, and Etowah's much improved this year.
They are. They have a very good quarterback and a head coach right now, Drew Knowles, that is now in this program and has it almost established. And I think they want to take that next step forward. They had a huge win over Guntersville last week. They'll have more big games down the road, but 5A North is so winnable. And 5A North is winnable in a situation where Alexandria was a couple feet away from winning it last year, and now Etowah's in a position to do it this year. I think this is Etowah's time.
It's a great matchup on paper. These two names, Etowah versus Alexandria, it's got a lot of marquee value to it. Be interesting to me, though, to see if Alexandria can stick in this game for 4 quarters. I think after the way they played last week, after losing their first game, gives me a little bit of hope that this could wind up being kind of a game of the week finish here. We'll see, though.
This whole region, it's a lot of Etowah, Northern versus, Alexandria and those types. A lot of teams that were once really good and now they're having a chance to play each other again.
Yeah, it's the ebbs and flows of football, and I think that what we're seeing now is Etowah making its turn up, and in a lot of ways Alexandria making its turn down, but Alexandria has the talent. They have Keenan Woodruff, who is one of the best players in Calhoun County. I think that this is a good statement game for Alexandria. Because you remember last year when Anniston beat Alexandria and Alexandria was just absolutely rolling? Right now, Alexandria could play the Anniston and beat the team that's undefeated right now.
Yeah, and the thing that Alexandria did last week, they scored a lot of points. What was it, 50-something points against Boaz after not scoring many in week 1. And that's what they did so well last year, is they were just racking up so many points on offense. So this game could be an interesting, high-scoring game.
Well, you'll see the highlights of that game and many others this week on the Pigskin Roundup coming up Friday at 10:30. We'll be out at Jacksonville, Central Clay, Oxford, Weaver, Coosa Christian, and more. Wellborn head coach Jeff Smith will be live in studio with us. And as always, be sure to check us out on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Well, this past weekend, Mumford native Brett Holmes was back on the ARCA track. He finished 3rd. It's his 5th ARCA race this season and already finishing in 3rd.
Yeah, high reps. And we talk about this in every sport. Just the amount of times you can get reps in anything bodes so well. And I think that his learning curve is just, it's so much shorter than most drivers because he's been in a car for forever. And he showed himself really well a few weeks ago, his last race in ARCA Series, and then now finishing 3rd. He's just on this trend upward, and he's got a great crew chief in Grant Eppinger, who is kind of almost like a mentor, Grant, because he's done such a great job in ARCA Series. But I think that with Holmes, we're seeing the start of what could be a phenomenal racing career, and it's just proving itself more and more. And this year, he's playing the series almost perfectly, where he still has a rookie status going into next season as well. And so you temper the fact that he's got pretty smart guys around him, and he's doing well on the racetrack. I think he's got a bright future.
And like a lot of racing organizations and teams, this is a family affair. Sure. And one of the things that they're doing smart is they're not trying to overdo it. He's running a manageable schedule. Brett is still in college, and so he is taking on the type of schedule that he can handle, that he can manage, and they're looking to run some truck races next year. So they're taking it at a good pace, and he's having success. That's what you do. You set a pace you can handle, experience success, take the next step.
Right.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, and we'll keep you updated with Brett and his racing. We're going to grab another timeout. When we come back, it'll be the Locker Room Roundtable and our Pick 6, so stay with us. Back here in the locker room, and it's time for the Locker Room Roundtable. We'll start with some college football. The Clemson Tigers, they started out as a preseason favorite. Everybody after last year was all about Clemson. This year, they beat Auburn, they beat Troy, both close games. What's wrong with Clemson so far?
I can see the reason for red flags going up after the way they struggled against Auburn. A lot of people wrote that off to an improved Auburn defense, Jordan Hare on a Saturday night. But then you come back and you see what happened in the game against Troy. To me, I still kind of say, well, that's them coming back home. It's Troy. I still think, to me, I need to see a little more work here before I make any rash judgments over Clemson. They've got too much talent to just completely fall off. Again, I see why people would be asking this question, but I just need to see a few more games before I draw a conclusion.
Right, and you have to remember when you are Clemson and right now, in the position that you're in, the way you played Alabama in the national championship game, every game is your Super Bowl. And so everybody will play up to them. And I don't know if you remember when Florida State beat Auburn in that 2013 national championship game. Jameis came back the year after that. That team just did not look the same. And they ended up suffering a couple losses because of the fact that I just think that they didn't take the right mentality into the game. If Clemson's not mentally prepared, then I think that they can end up having a couple trip marks on their schedule and on the way to the game that I think that they're looking forward to anyways right now. And I think right now all the focus is on Florida State. And it was that way, I think, against Auburn, and it was that way, I think, against Troy as well. So we'll see how they go, but I think that one mistake and Dabo's team is now looking up in the standings. And Florida State has got a big game as well that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Well, we'll switch to baseball now. Saturday night, while all this college football was going on, the Dodgers were playing baseball. Rich Hill, in the middle of a perfect game, his coach pulled him after 7 innings. Should he have been pulled from a game when they're, 4 games ahead?
They've been playing baseball since the 1800 was the starting mark on the year for circa 1800 years after the Christ. I think that in a situation like this, baseball's had a handful of perfect games, and I mean a handful. You can count them with 1 or 2 hands. And he was good through 7. The Dodgers right now are about 3, 4. They're now 4 games ahead of the San Francisco Giants. I do understand wanting to save your pitcher, looking long-term instead of short-term, but that was just such a special moment. That was a budding special moment. He was still 9 outs away, but I think to rob that guy of what can be a perfect game, you hate it for Rich Hill. They better win a World Series.
To me, you pull him if you have to.
Right.
He was rolling. Don't pull him unless he gets in trouble. Gets in trouble, then it's over. But as long as he's rolling and knocking him down, let him go.
And the thing is, it's a perfect game, not a no-hitter. We see no-hitters every other day.
Right.
But a perfect game, like Mickey said, you could just pull him after the first single. No more perfect game, then you're good to go. And they were winning in the game. I hate it for them.
Well, let's talk NFL now. It began this past weekend. I know it's just the first week, but who are some favorites in the NFL?
Well, again, it's just 1 week, but I was so impressed with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh went into Washington and Jay Gruden's done a good job with Washington. They don't have great quarterback play. They got average quarterback play, but they've got a lot of other pieces in place, got a good secondary, and Pittsburgh just picked them apart. So I think this could be an interesting year to watch the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the other usual suspects, I think Carolina is going to be a factor. I think when Tom Brady comes back, New England is going to be a factor. But after what I saw in week 1, I'm tipping my hat to the Steelers.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Tom Brady effect. And full disclosure, I am a New England Patriots fan. But how about that going in with a new quarterback who's playing in his first ever game in Jimmy Garoppolo, going to Arizona, a team that many think that can play for a Super Bowl this year, and Bruce Arians, who's thought of widely as one of the better coaches in the league, really like what the New England Patriots did last week and where they did it last week. They went on the road across the country and got a big win. But also I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm not saying they're Super Bowl contenders right now, but where Jameis is and where Quan Alexander is, 17 tackles and a sack the other day against the Atlanta Falcons, I think they're trending right now in the right direction. They got a big win over the Falcons in Atlanta.
Well, one of those quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks who got his first start this week in Dak Prescott. We've talked about him here on the show, replacing Tony Romo. What are y'all's thoughts on his performance Sunday?
I said it before. He's the guy. I mean, Tony Romo might as well get ready to be a backup in Big D because Jerry Jones has got to be just grinning from ear to ear over what they found here at quarterback. This is a potentially long-term solution to the most important position in the NFL.
You're seeing NFL throws right here. And we had these questions with Carson Wentz. We had these questions with Jared Goff. We had these questions with Dak Prescott because remember, he was a 4th-round draft pick. I mean, nobody outside of Russell Wilson has been drafted that late and started this early. I think Dak Prescott right now is in a great position, like Mickey said, to take over that job. And the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys is unlike any other position in sports, kind of like the shortstop for the New York Yankees. It's a different position, and he seems, as of right now, to handle it pretty well.
And he's a strong guy. You think about it, he didn't have much of an injury history at Mississippi State, playing against a lot of good defenses in the SEC. He's built good. I think this could be somebody we're looking at quarterback in Dallas for a number of years.
Right.
Well, let's switch back to college football now for our Pick 6, and let's take a look at last week's standings for our Pick 6. I went 2-4 last week, which makes me 5-7 for the year. Gerhard and Mickey both 4-2 and 8-4. So first game up, Alabama at Ole Miss, Mickey.
I'm going to go with Alabama. I think that Alabama's defense is going to cause Chad Kelly and the Ole Miss offense too many problems for them to be able to win this game, even though they're at home.
Yeah, I said earlier in the show, don't listen to any Alabama player, coach, anybody affiliated with that program that tells you this is not a revenge game. Revenge is on their minds. I think we saw it last week against Western Kentucky. I like the Tide, and I like them pretty big.
I'm going with the Crimson Tide as well. Next up, Texas A&M at Auburn.
This is a tough one. This is a pick 'em, really. But I'm going to go Auburn at home. I think Auburn, if they will come out and do what they did offensively, as long as they don't have a big letdown defensively, I think they can score enough points to win, and I do think there will be a lot of points on the scoreboard at the end of the night at Jordan-Hare Saturday night.
Absolutely. You'll momentarily see my head below the Auburn Tigers as well. The reason why is because of that offensive performance. Now, the defense will have to put some pressure on Trevor Knight and really get to him early. I think they can. And if you can keep that Texas A&M defense off the field and keep Myles Garrett so far away from Sean White, I think Auburn will have enough juice offensively and defensively to wrap up a win.
A lot of points, but I'm going with the Aggies of Texas A&M. Next up, Florida State at Louisville.
This is a tough one because, I think Lamar Jackson, everybody's in love with that young man and what he's done already this season. But I just think Florida State, from top to bottom, is the better team.
Florida State in the second half against Ole Miss, if that is their ceiling, they could beat anybody in the country. This is, to me, that game. That Bobby Petrino needs that game. And this game is at home. And if Florida State starts the way they did against Ole Miss, just a slow, sluggish start, Louisville can come back and really seize that momentum and beat them. I like Louisville to pull the upset at home over the Seminoles.
I'm impressed with Florida State. I'm going with the Noles. Next up, Michigan State at Notre Dame.
I really like Notre Dame, even though they lost to Texas. I thought they showed a lot of potential. Two outstanding quarterbacks. I think they have enough at home to get past Michigan State.
Yeah, Notre Dame's an 8-point favorite in this game, and I think that says a lot to where Notre Dame's quarterback situation is right now. I don't think Michigan State is as good where they were last year. I like the Irish.
I'm going with Notre Dame in this one. Next SEC matchup, Georgia at Missouri.
Well, against my better judgment after the way Georgia stunk up the joint last week against Nichols, I'm still going to pick Georgia because I think right now while Kirby Smart's trying to get them going at a level of winning that he wants, I think Georgia may be a team that plays down to their competition and plays up to their competition. So I think they play well on the road this weekend.
Yeah, I like Georgia too, and this is mainly a talent thing. I think they just have more talent than Missouri right now. Missouri isn't where they need to be, or isn't not where they were a couple of years ago when they were winning SEC East championships. They're still on the rise. Georgia's there right now. I like the road win.
I got the Georgia Bulldogs as well. And finally, Ohio State at Oklahoma.
Asked me a couple of weeks ago, I might have gone with the home team, but I tell you what, how can you pick Oklahoma against anybody right now, especially Ohio State?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield for Oklahoma, I thought he'd get out to a much better start than he has so far. We talked about Clemson getting off to a slow start. I really like the Buckeyes. I like the way they're playing. Oklahoma knows that they lose this game, they're potentially out of the college football playoff talk. I think Ohio State does enough to get the win over the Sooners.
I'm going with the Buckeyes in this one as well. That'll do it for the show this week. Hope you have a great week and join us right back here next week on The Locker Room.